Good morning. It is such a pleasure and honor to welcome all of you here today. Today, we are starting our morning bites with some very, very special guests. We have four extremely special guests that we're honored to host, and they happen to be four former students of mine. So I feel quite old today, getting to welcome these really young adults into our community and into our space here at Escola Concept Virtual School. So I would like to welcome Pedro Farias, who is speaking to us directly from New York now. Pedro was my student at the American School of Brasilia, so super happy to have him. And he is now a Harvard graduate. We have Clarissa Passarinho, who is also a student of mine, and she's speaking directly from New York as well. And Clarissa was my science student at the Escola das Nações in Brasilia. Super grateful to have you, Clarissa. We have José Guilherme, who happened to be my student in two places. I had the pleasure of having José as my student at the American School of Brasilia, where I think I was his science teacher. And then, or maybe just his principal, I'm not really sure if he was able to have me in the classroom or not. And then again, José Guilherme got to follow me to North Broward Preparatory School in Boca Raton, Florida. So that was super special. And José is with us directly from São Paulo today. And then I have Ryan Sandler, who I didn't get to teach, but I got to be part of the school's leadership team and helping him in his process with his schedule and college applications and getting ready for that big leap in his life. And Ryan is speaking to us today directly from Boca Raton, Florida, and he's currently at Yale University. So we are super excited to have these four very important guests who we're going to have the opportunity to chat about transitions, about life, about academic journeys, and how do we all prepare for these next big steps in our lives from your perspective. So thank you. I'd like to allow them each to introduce themselves and to share a little bit about their stories and their journeys before we get started with all these questions that you guys have prepared for us in advance. So Pedro, since I introduced you first, if you wouldn't mind starting us off and telling us a little bit about who you are and some of the highlights in your journey.
For sure. Hey guys. My name is Pedro Farias. I'm really glad to be with everyone today, and I'm super excited to have this conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it and are able to learn a little bit from all our experiences so you don't make the same mistakes that we did, and so that you're able to leverage the right decisions that we made as well. So I'm from Brasilia. I spent my entire life growing up there, but then all of that changed when I was 16. When I was 16, I got admitted to Harvard, and then I ended up choosing Harvard among some other schools because I really, really liked the fact that there was, number one, a really strong Brazilian community. That's going to be important as I tell you a little bit more about what I did there. And then number two, of course, it's a really great academic environment. But what I think was really, really special for me is that at Harvard, we have something called the Brazil Conference at Harvard and MIT. It's hosted by the two universities. And that was something I was looking into when I was deciding where I wanted to go to school, because I saw that this conference had a lot of potential. At the time, it was kind of just an academic conference, but I thought it could be really, really big. And so I got involved in this conference. I ended up presiding it 2 years later when I was a junior. And it was a lot of fun because over the time that I was there, we were able to bring people like Warren Buffett, people like the vice president of Brazil, who I interviewed, a bunch of different Brazilian businessmen and whatnot. And so with that, I was able to really just get to know a bunch of really cool people. And at the same time, I was able to really develop myself outside of the classroom. In the classroom, I studied applied mathematics and economics. I have no idea what that was before I was actually at Harvard and trying to decide on what to study. But the reason I went with mathematics, and I remember this very, very well, is that when I was in fourth grade, I made a mistake on a 2-digit multiplication problem. And I had skipped the third grade, so I didn't really know anyone in fourth grade. I was pretty young, and I didn't really know any of the math in fourth grade, and that's why, of course, I got it wrong. But because I got it wrong, and because it was this like daily quiz that everyone had to take, and it was very, very public, I was like, I should probably learn some mathematics. And so that's kind of what I ended up doing over the next few years. And actually, Miss Priscilla was a really big part of this in making sure I could advance my mathematics studies. So I ended up doing calculus when I was 13 because I ended up really liking math. And then that's kind of like how I ended up liking mathematics. I ended up doing applied mathematics just because I thought it was better than doing numbers. I don't like numbers for numbers' sake, but I do like learning how to express the world through numbers. So that's kind of why a little bit about me with regards to why I went to Harvard, why I studied what I did. And now looking forward, I'm actually thinking about what I want to do post-graduation, since I just graduated this year. And I think that the biggest thing here is realizing that a lot of what I did earlier on, so a lot of what I did in middle school and high school and now college, has really helped me develop a bunch of the different skills that we'll be talking about today. And so if you guys have any questions about what you can do now to prepare for the future as well, I'd be happy to address those as we go along. And I'm sure I've already overspent my time, so I'll stop talking there.
Thank you so much, Pedro. Wow. I didn't know the fourth grade story. So that was some new information for me. I love that. And I think that one of the really great things as well is that when you were in middle school, you took your mathematics education further, and you also took online classes through Johns Hopkins, right? Through the CTY,
exactly.
Through the Center for the Talented Youth. I remember that. And you had
exactly.
Mr. Berger as one of your teachers.
Yes.
I remember that
great.
story. Excellent. All right. Clarissa, would you like to go next?
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Clarissa. It's a pleasure to be here. Ms. Priscilla was my one of my favorite teachers in middle school, and it's great to be here talking to all of you. I've studied. I'm also from Brasilia, like Pedro, and I've studied in a bilingual school most of my life. And when it was time to make a decision of where to study and what to study, I wanted to stay in Brazil. So at that time, I didn't see for me as an option to go abroad. And I've always, not like Pedro, I'm not a math person. I've always liked reading books and novels and geography and history and writing. So I decided to do law. And so I was very focused in getting in a good university. So I studied for the vestibular, and I got into Universidade de Brasília, the University of Brasilia. And it was a great experience. When you study in a public university in Brasilia, it really takes you out of this kind of like very privileged upbringing that everyone here have, and it really kind of opens your mind to many things that were very important for me. So when I was 2 years before graduating, I started interning. So I did a few interns in some law firms, and about 1 year after graduating, I decided that I really wanted to work with anti-corruption law because the Lava Jato was really big and everyone was talking about it, and it just sounded so interesting. So I decided to change to this new law firm to work with that. And it was quite, it was a really great experience. I got to work in really interesting cases. And after working there for about 4 years, I decided to do a postgraduate, to do a master's degree, to get a master's degree. And I decided to come here to New York just because I really love the city. And I really wanted to be in a place where kind of everything happens, where you can meet so many interesting people. And at the same time, the NYU has a really strong program in compliance and anti-corruption. So studying here was quite an interesting ride. And at the same time, when you study abroad, you really get classes that really open your mind to other issues. So I've been working with anti-corruption for many years, but here I got to study art law. I got to study free speech and applied to LGBT, gender, and race issues. So I think it's, for me, what I've learned in my career and as a student is just always to be curious, to really want to not only focus on that thing that you do, but really like try to open your mind to new issues, take different classes, and just kind of be curious, like go around and try to learn as much as you can.
You're muted, Miss Torres.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for telling me. But thank you so much, Clarissa, for sharing. And being curious is such an important part of the process for all of us, right? And being continuous lifelong learners. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing about your trajectory and how you got to NYU, which was, you know, a non-linear pathway. So thank you for that as well. José, what about you?
Hello, my name is José Guilherme. I'm from Brasilia, and Miss Priscilla has played a very important role in my life, and our paths have crossed a few times. And unlike Clarissa and Pedro, I'm neither a reader or a mathematics kind of person. I'm more of a hands-on person, and that's something that's very interesting. We have a very different cultural background in here, but throughout my life, especially now that I'm starting to get a little bit old and I look back, I see a few turning points in my life. And Miss Priscilla has played a very important role in two of those. The first one is when I started attending an international school. I see that as a key moment in my life because I went from hating school to really loving it and enjoying it. And my experience completely changed. I went from being a horrible student, not being involved, and not really understanding the concept of school to really enjoying it. And that really changed the perspective and the opportunities I would have in the future. So I went from studying at a regular Brazilian school to studying at an international school. And from there, I moved to the US, and actually Miss Priscilla followed me. I didn't follow Miss Priscilla. That's a little correction we have to make. But she followed me to the US. I had an amazing experience. I actually met Ryan there. We worked a little bit at a club of ours called Knowledge Spread. We had a few meetings together. It was awesome time. We were trying to make education better in Brazil, especially in the Amazon. And at North Broward, I think I entered the second turning point where Miss Priscilla had another role by writing me an amazing recommendation letter that I have not read because I am not allowed to, but that's what I've heard. And so that was another turning point. I got to attend Babson, which was my dream school. Throughout high school, it was where I wanted to go. It was where I was working to go. And it was just an awesome experience. And that's where my second turning point started. And that's when my father was involved in an accident and I had to come back to Brazil, and very important point in my life, but a very interesting experience that really changed the person that I am today and brought a lot of new opportunities to my life. I went from studying at Babson to coming back to Brazil and attending law school here, which I hated, was probably the worst experience of my life, but it was a learning experience. And at a time of uncertainty, complete uncertainty, because it was going completely outside of the plan I had for my life. But it was an opportunity to grow. I met a lot of people that really helped me, and I decided it wasn't the course I wanted to follow. So I switched to ESPM. Now I'm a marketing student, which I really enjoy. And I think opportunities don't necessarily come in the way you plan, but when they come, you need to make sure you use them and you grab on them and follow the opportunity you're having. And that's just how life is. It's not a linear path. It's full of curves, and adapting to those it's a need you have. And if you're able to do it, you're always going to have the best of the experiences and and you get the best from the doors that open to you. So that's a little bit of my life. And thank you, Miss Priscilla, for playing such an important role in my life, honestly.
That's so sweet. Thank you. I feel honored. Thank you so much. And it's my pleasure. I remember, Jose, you were you loved photography at one point.
Yes.
You were like obsessed with taking pictures. And we went to the Amazon and you took all these amazing pictures and we created this whole exhibit of your pictures. You remember that? And we invited people to come to your exhibit so that they could see the pictures that you had taken of the Amazon and of the beautiful natural resources, of the animals. And for me, that was something that I never forgot because you then gave me a book with your pictures. You guys created a book, your family did. And I still have that book. Actually, I believe it's in my home in Florida. So I still kept it, and it's very near and dear to my heart. So thank you.
And we got to help Crisley. I don't know if you remember his story. It was Pedro was also involved in that. It was an amazing experience.
Absolutely, I do remember. We had a burnt victim that we adopted, and we were looking for a cause to get involved as part of the. I don't remember if it was SUCO or National Junior Honor Society. And
SUCO,
when we,
I think.
yeah, we found this cause, which was you guys were really passionate about the burnt victims. And we went to the hospital, the burnt victim hospital in Brasilia, and we got connected to Crisley, and we helped Crisley. We funded helped fund some of the surgeries that he had to do along the way. So yeah, I remember that. So
awesome.
Thank you. Lots of good memories. And Mr. Ryan Sandler, last but not least, would you like to share a little bit about your story with us?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Like one of the silver linings of having to go online so quickly has been reconnecting with all the people I haven't seen in so long, and I'm super excited to be able to join the concepts community for today. I think probably what has defined me most over the past few years has been my growing passion for education and law and how they come together. So I've known for a while that I've always wanted to work in educational quality and equity in some way. I started teaching in high school in large part thanks to Miss Priscilla's mentorship and guidance. I got involved in education technology and how we can go about supporting teachers to leverage it better in their classrooms at North Broward. And then senior year, I was able to co-teach a calculus class under much of Miss Priscilla's mentorship. So that really was formative in shaping my interest in education and pedagogy and how we can go about strengthening student learning. I became interested in it from a policy side when I started reading a lot more, probably midway through high school, about how deeply systemic equities plague the American education system in particular. And I wasn't really sure how to go about it. My dream job for a while was Secretary of Education of the US. It still may be, I don't know. But I really know that I want to work on this problem in some capacity. So one of the major turning points for me that's been really recent, I came to Yale and took a constitutional law class with Achille Damar. I came to appreciate law as a tool for answering really hard questions about justice and how we should go about ensuring that everybody in our society has access to the rights that we hope they will. So as of late, I've become really interested in how constitutional law can help us ensure that students have access to a quality and equitable education in the States. In the classroom, I study political science and education studies. I take a bunch of psych classes too. I think they're really interesting and help with the other disciplines. I teach a lot. I still teach math in keeping with high school. I teach math 110 and 111 sections at Yale, which is one of my favorite parts of the day. I do curriculum work for Yale on the Committee on Majors, which involves figuring out how the Yale curriculum should best move forward to support the goals of liberal arts learning. And I really enjoy political philosophy debate. I'm part of the Progressive Party of the Yale Political Union. Now, I think the next turning point, hopefully for me, is law or grad school. I'm thinking about potential opportunities that could be really interesting and hopefully help me advocate for change better and work for good in our society better than I can right now. I'm looking at a bunch of opportunities and hoping to figure out what's next soon.
Okay, I was muted again. Thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you so much for sharing your trajectory and your life story. And it's so interesting to bring the four of you together because there's similarities, of course, in the journeys that you guys have taken and chosen to take. There's so many differences, and there's so many opportunities, right, that emerged in your lives at different points and at different times. And be it through an inspiration that you had when you were in lower school, or be it through a moment in middle school, or be it through a moment in high school. But these moments all helped shape the journey and the moment that you guys are now living. So these transitions and these opportunities are so interesting to talk about. And when we think about those, our chat is just on fire. We have so many questions for you guys. I feel bad because we're never going to get to all of these questions, but we have selected a few, and we would like you guys to have the opportunity to talk to us a little bit more about your trajectory, and a little bit more about your life story, and a little bit more about how you guys got to where you are today, and what are some thoughts, and what are some of the ideas, what are some of the suggestions, what are some advice that you guys would have to share with everyone else that's out there. But with that being said, one of the first questions that we received was from Julie, and Julie asked the following: do you think it was harder for you than it was for others to be where you are today? And as a tag along to that question, in addition to, did you change your idea of what college or university you wanted to go to multiple times? So was it harder for you than it was for others? And then did you have a change of heart many times?
May I start?
Absolutely.
Okay, so to me, I actually think it was easier than to a lot of people. I've had many opportunities throughout high school and even middle school. So I think it was kind of an easy ride. And when I decided to attend Babson originally, it was pretty much, I fell in love with Babson. And it's the moment it happened is actually a very interesting story. I was sitting down at a design technology class at North Broward, and we were talking about college acceptances and where our friends were going to go. And one of my Brazilian friends was like, "Oh, Felipe's girlfriend is going to Babson." And I was like, "What? What even is Babson? Like, what kind of name is that?" And I looked it up, and I was like, "It sounds like a funny name. It's not going to be a good school." So I looked it up, and it was ranked #1 entrepreneurship school for like 27 years. And I was like, wow, how have I never heard about this school? So I looked it up. I was instantly in love. And I remember I emailed my dad that night saying, this is where I want to go. That was maybe junior year, even sophomore year. So I emailed my dad, and that's the events played out, and I got into Babson, which was my #1 choice, and where I wanted to go, I ED'd there. So I did early decision. And when I got in, I gladly withdrew all the other applications. I was very excited. I remember the moment. I actually went to eat a burger with Miss Priscilla that day to celebrate. It was an awesome moment. So I had a lot of privileges, honestly, and I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful for the opportunities I had in high school and throughout my life. So I think it was an easy ride, honestly. I worked very hard, but I got the best out of the opportunities I had, and that's why it was easier than to other people in order to get into Babson. So I think it's a lot about taking the most out of the opportunities you have, and if you do that, it's gonna be easy. It's gonna work.
Thank you for that, José. I actually do remember our burger celebration. I was trying to remember the name of the burger place, but I remember we went to the mall and we celebrated at the burger shop. I remember that. I think we had milkshake and cheeseburgers.
Exactly. So, I still have, I'm looking for it now, but I won't find it. But I still have the book you gave me to write down my great ideas. I still have it, and it's full of my, oh, here it is. Hold on. It's full of my plans for the things that I want to do when I become the president of Brazil. I'll pick it up. One of the ideas is bringing Ryan here so we can change the education system.
Awesome. That sounds like a plan. And we would be happy to have Ryan over. Wow. I remember the book now. So interesting memories.
I'm trying to find it. Hold on.
Going down memory lane. Yeah. When you find it, definitely pull it up because we all want to see it. Thank you, Jose. Thank you for that. Would anyone like to add anything to what Jose had to say with regards to being a difficult or an easy path? And did you change your idea about the university multiple times or not?
Let me interrupt you for a second. Here it is. Ideas under construction.
That is true. Thank you, Jose. Wow. Very cool. Very cool to see.
Thank you, Ms. Priscilla.
Absolutely. Thank you. Very cool. Oh,
Also has a special note.
Yep. I see that. That's awesome. That's awesome. Would anyone like to add anything to Jose?
Sure, I can add a bit on the second question.
Okay.
I think I'm not sure how easy or hard my time was figuring things out compared to others. It's really hard to know since I've only gone through the whole admissions and college process once. But I think a major takeaway of the whole thing for me, I had a really hard time deciding in the end which school to go to. I was lucky to have multiple opportunities that were all really cool, and I was trying to figure it out, and it took me a long time. But I think the main takeaway of it all for me, I ended up going with my gut and coming to Yale just because I really loved how excited and passionate and smart and caring and wonderful and ambitious the people were. I wanted to be in a place where people cared a lot and wanted to make the world better and wanted to support each other in learning how to do it, and in becoming better people ourselves. And I think that's a principle and priority that has generally served me well and connected me with a lot of the people that I've come to really care about deeply and who've been some of my greatest mentors. So I think as difficult as the choice can be, it's really good if you can focus on the kind of people you're going to connect with and make sure that you're in an environment where you think the people will invest in helping you grow and where you think you'll be able to invest in helping others grow.
Thank you for that, Ryan. I think what we've all learned from this pandemic is the importance of relationships, right? And how important relationships are in framing our lives, right? And how relationships really matter, and being close to people and connecting with people that either have similar interests or that will keep you curious or that will keep you engaged, that will keep you involved in so many ways is just very important in all of our lives. So, picking the best place or choosing that best place that has the people that will talk to what you are, what you believe in, what you want to strive for, what are the goals that you want to set, and who are the people that will keep you mentally engaged throughout the process is just so important. So thank you for that. Thank you for adding that. One of the other questions, and Julia actually asked this question, and she has lots of questions that she has been asking here. But one of them is, what tips do you have for people who don't know what they want to study? What are some of the tips that you would throw out there?
Well, I think you should start with the classes, thinking about the classes that you're more interested in taking. Think about things that you like to do in your free time as well, and think about things that you like to read on your free time. And that kind of more or less tells you what are the areas that you're more interested in. I think something that I would change if I were in high school is that I would go after people that are taking the classes or taking the courses that you're thinking of taking, and talking to them and trying to understand what is the experience like. Because when I started studying law, I didn't really have an idea of how that would be. And what you can actually do is that you can go to a university, to a public university in Brazil, and you can just take a class, for example. And if you're thinking of going to a university in the US, you can also visit them and ask to take classes. I think that is very important. It's something that I didn't do because at the time I didn't know that was that option. But looking back, it's something that I think it's really important, because you might think that and a specific class is the most interesting thing, and then when you actually take it, it's completely different. So I would really to talk to people that are studying those classes, to try to take some classes. And yeah, I think that would be very important. It's something that I would do if I could go back.
Thank you, Clarissa. Thank you for sharing that. And absolutely talking to people, right? Connecting with people that have the similar interests that you believe you have, to see if you really do have those interests, or if the idea just sounds more interesting than it really is, and that you're not, once you talk to those people, it might be that that's not what you're very passionate about. Once you really find out what law school will look like, how much reading are you going to have to do? How much about the government are you going to have to know? How much history are you going to have to be involved in learning? And maybe if that's not your thing, you might as well learn from people that are there, obviously talking to multiple people and interviewing multiple people, so you can get multiple perspectives of what awaits you in case you make that decision. Would anyone like to add to what Clarissa has shared with regards to tips?
Yeah, I'd say that it's good for you to take advantage of, kind of like take small risks, in the sense of take courses that you might not know too much about, especially in middle and high school, just so you can get a better understanding of what those courses really are. So even if you're not really sure exactly what a course is, or if you're going to like it, it's worth not only asking people about it and trying to inform yourself. That's really, really important before you take the next step. But the next step is then actually trying it out. Because if you get exposure to that earlier on, then if it's something you enjoy, great. That means you can dedicate a lot of time in it, and you can develop yourself there for a while. If it's something that you don't enjoy, that's also great, because then you can kind of like cut it off early, so you don't spend a lot of time doing things that you don't enjoy. And I think it's important for you to know too, that when you apply to college, you don't have to know what you want to study, right? And in fact, a lot of people do end up changing. I applied thinking I was going to study computer science, but then I ended up thinking that mathematics would make more sense. And then I did applied mathematics in economics. I had never taken an economics course before the sophomore year, my sophomore year in college. And so I think that it's important for you to try new things early on, especially in college. Your freshman year is basically just a year for you to explore, because that way you're really able to make sure that you're going down the path that you want to go down.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you for that. And yeah, absolutely. If you don't know what you want to study, in some places, like in the US, you can apply for undecided, and you can be undecided for 2 years, and you can explore options and opportunities to see what makes the most sense, so that you could then jump into something that you're really passionate about. With regards to highlights and lowlights, so Manu is asking if you guys could share 3 highlights and 3 lowlights with regards to your experience, your university experience, your experience living abroad, just your experiences in general. 3 highlights and 3 lowlights. Who would like to jump in?
I can jump in. So since I've had a few turns in my educational career, I have a little bit to contribute to this conversation. And I think the lowlights are mainly from the Brazilian education system. It's a very content intense methodology, and that doesn't really work for me. So all the problems and the struggles I've had in college and in school actually are related to how the Brazilian education system is structured. And the fact that you're not allowed to necessarily pick your electives or to make your choose your courses from the beginning. You're most likely going to be allowed to do that in the last few semesters, but not in the beginning. And you have to follow a mandatory curriculum. That kind of damages the experience for me. And the positives, the highlights, I'm not going to give you 3 highlights, but in general are mostly from doing what you like. So if you choose to go and follow a career and pursue a degree in an area that you enjoy, it's going to be a lot easier because you're going to be doing something that you actually love. When I was attending law school here in Brasilia, it was very hard. I would get into the college, to the school, and I would start having headaches and feeling bad. And like, it sounds weird, but it's the truth. It didn't work for me because I didn't love it. But when I was at Babson, or now that I'm studying marketing, I really love it. And I go to school and I'm doing something that I enjoy. I'm meeting people that I think will contribute to me in the future. So it's really about doing something you enjoy. And another experience that I really like from my college experience is living outside of home and having to figure things out and solve your problems on your own, and having the freedom to do that. Because while you're in college, it's kind of a safety net. You have a lot of responsibilities, but you also have your parents to still support you. So it's very important to go out, like move out of home, move out of your the places that your comfort zone, the places that you're always in. If you live in Sao Paulo, go to Rio, for example, go to the US, but don't stay in your comfort zone, because it's an opportunity for you to try things that are new, but also having someone to support you if you need. So those are a little bit of the positives that I've had. So I would honestly recommend go abroad, go to another city. Don't stay in your house. Like, that completely ruins the college experience. I had the experience to come back to Brasilia, and it completely changed like my experience. I stopped growing. It was completely different. Something I don't recommend at all.
All right. So I guess it's interesting to hear that perspective of, just taking those responsible risks, right? At Escola Concept, we work with the 16 habits of mind. And one of them is just taking responsible risks and being a responsible risk taker, and understanding what that will mean for your future, and understanding that when you take risks and when you feel uncomfortable, right? When there's discomfort, that's when you start growing, right? You're not going to grow when it's comfortable. And when if everything's just perfect, and everything's just easy, and everything is just the way that you've planned it in your whole entire life, sometimes things are not going to just things are not those are not going to be moments that are going to teach you life lessons, right? It's when you actually go through the pains, and when you go through the discomfort, and when you go through uncertainty, when you have to try to solve problems on your own. I know that José also had an experience as a boarding student. Didn't you, José?
No, but I lived at a friend's house for a
Oh, you
whole
lived
year,
at a friend's house. That was right.
which was a great experience and a lot of learning from it. Like, I had experiences that I would never have if I was living at home. I lived with a family that had a completely different cultural background. So it honestly really redefined my character and my experiences. Very, very remarkable experience, actually.
Right. So, and that is definitely leaving your comfort zone, right? Being able to, now you're living with a different family, a family in a different country. So you're living with a family that is not yours, in a country that is foreign to you, in a whole different cultural context of the family that is unknown to you. And here you are as part of this moment and opportunity. And then what do you do with this opportunity? What do you make of the moment, right? And it's all those takeaways and how you choose to see the opportunities that you're that you're going through and that you're living through, is what's going to make the biggest difference in your lives. So kind of think about that as we continue our conversation. Do you have any other tips that you guys would like to throw in?
I can speak about a bit about this as well. I think the highlight for me probably comes in part from Pedro's point of intellectual exploration, and from Jose's point of risk taking too. One of the greatest highlights probably of the past 3 years for me has just been getting exposed to individuals with completely different interests who are also super passionate about fixing the world's problems. Intellectual exploration and trying things outside of my discipline has never failed. Like, well, not that I've never failed, but the practice of exploring has never failed me. Every time I speak to someone from like a completely different interest, often we wind up talking about common problems that we're both thinking about in some form, or even if we wind up talking about education, which is my favorite subject, often disciplines will always add something. Like, I love talking about education issues, especially when I can get psych people, law people, history people, all sorts of people with different disciplinary approaches at the table, and all sorts of backgrounds ideally too, just because there are so many approaches to solving society's critical problems that you almost have to have a lot of them at the table at once to be able to approach complex, intractable issues. I think getting to be a part of environments like that, where so many perspectives come together to talk about really hard problems, has been one of the highlights for me of the past while. And I think individually we can do that too. The more we make sure that our own educational paths span across disciplines and perspectives. I think a low light for me, in kind of a somewhat related note, is probably just achieving balance. With all that said, it's really hard when you get super invested in a problem or in even education at large to stay sane at some point. Our bodies need really basic inputs like sleep, exercise, rest. Meditation helps too, to make sure that you are thriving and operating at your best when you think about the things that you care most about. And I think it can be really easy, especially when you get caught up in a university environment for the first year, to let some of those inputs slip, especially as you like adjust and figure out what you're interested in. That can be a super heavy time commitment. I'm still learning to do this and trying really hard. I think one of my goals for the next while is to strike an even better, healthier balance, so that I can make sure that I'm performing at my best when I need to be.
Thank you so much for that, Ryan. And thank you for bringing up this idea of balance, right? I remember back in high school where you were constantly up and you had very little sleep, because you were constantly programming our whole web of what were the opportunities for classes that students can take. I don't know if you remember that huge project.
The course maps, yeah.
The course maps, exactly, that you were heavily involved in with me, and how you would get almost zero sleep while you were trying to, code and program all of those course maps. And the importance, right, of rest, of meditation, of sleep, of exercise. Like, we function better when we do all those things, right? Even though sometimes we can strongly disagree to go to bed, and we strongly disagree to exercise, and we strongly disagree to eat right. We all know that when we have our 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night, and when we eat healthy foods that are going to give us energy and that are going to allow us to support the nutrition of our bodies, and when we exercise and we do movement and we go outside, those are all things that are super helpful for us. And I think that this pandemic has also showed us that, especially when we switched from physical to virtual overnight. A lot of homes became home offices, and the whole idea of having an end of the workday didn't exist, right? People were working, myself included, nonstop, and I didn't know when the day would begin and when the day would end. And we just kept on going and going and going. And sometimes you would look at the watch and it would be like, wow, it's 2:00 in the morning. It's 2:30 in the morning. And the next day you had to be up at 6 again. And so some of us were, kind of living on 4 hours of sleep. And at the end of weeks and weeks on end doing that, we do get very tired. We notice that our tolerance starts to diminish, right? We start to become less patient, and we start to make decisions like that sometimes don't make as much sense. And the importance of going back and just taking care and nurturing our body is just so, just so vital for all of us to just function appropriately. So thank you, Ryan, for bringing that up, which is something that sometimes just goes unsaid, right, with regards to balancing. And sometimes, yes, having too much to do might be exciting, and there's, so much to be engaged with, and so many conversations to have, and so many projects to do. But just kind of taking a step back and saying, all right, I need my space, and I also need to take care of me, because if I can't take care of myself, then I won't be able to function. So thank you for that. Thank you for that great reminder. One of the things that has been coming up as a common thread in the chat has been about getting it right, about how do you get it right? How do you know? How do you make the right choice? How do you make the right decision? But it's not always about getting it right? Because you're not always going to score. And sometimes the getting it wrong leads you to the getting it right. So can you guys talk a little bit about the failing forward that maybe some of you have experienced in your lives, and the getting it wrong moments that have made all of the difference?
Yes, I think that's a very important topic. I think when you're younger, when you're in middle school, you have this idea in your mind that your trajectory is going to be very linear. You're going to take a decision now, and that's pretty much your life will be decided. And I think growing up, you kind of realize that there's always a feeling that you're not there yet, that there's always something um, that you want to change, or it's hard to have that idea of like, okay, now I'm there, you know. And I think going back a little on the last question about low points and high points, I think I've met a lot of people during my career and here in my master's, and I realized a lot of people have to deal with anxiety. A lot of people have to deal with imposter syndrome and thinking like that they're not good enough. So I think once you realize that taking decisions and knowing that sometimes you're not going to get it right, it will be important for you growing up as a person, for you growing up as in experience and work and experience as well. So I think it's important to realize that that is part of the process, and not worry too much about getting it right, and at the same time not letting this is imposter syndrome that I realize so many people have, keeping you from taking risks, from taking decisions. And I think that has been one of the most important realizations in my career. Like when I graduated, I think I did had this idea that that it will be like that the path would be kind of easier, kind of linear. And that has to do a little bit with that first question on sorry, what was about the sorry, the first question was about
Being harder for other people.
yes, being hard for other
than for
people. And I
yourself.
think like it was hard and easy at the same time, because easy in the sense I was very lucky that my parents put me in a really, really great school, that I learned how to speak English, that opened so many doors. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that the whole path felt easy. I think it's very common for you when you're taking exams, when you're taking decisions, to think that that you won't get it, that it's hard, that you're not good enough. And I mean, my message here is for you not to let that stop you.
Thank you, Clarissa. Thank you for sharing that, because it's important that everyone knows that everyone goes through difficult moments. Everyone will go through perhaps a non-linear, curvy moment in life, and that you need to be able to kind of pick up and keep on going. So thank you for sharing the message. Pedro, would you like to share?
Definitely, yeah. I think especially because we are all relatively lucky, right? We all are going to have a really good education. It's very potentially appealing for us to just like if we dedicate ourselves, if we apply ourselves, we're probably going to have like a good result, right? If we stay on this track that we're already on, we're probably going to have a good result. And so it's hard for you to push yourself beyond the luck that you already have, and for you to take risks. But I think taking risks is extremely important if you want to go beyond doing okay, right? If you want to be exceptional, you'll need to take risks. And something I've had someone mentor me over the past 4 years, and he has always impressed on me the necessity to fail. So this guy, his name is José Guilherme. He's a really successful Brazilian investor. Every time we talk about taking risks, he makes something very clear. Before he became who he is today, he failed 3 times. And by fail, I don't mean like fail, of course, like he went bankrupt, right? So he had no money, essentially. And I think that it's important for us to stress these stories, right? If you think about the risks of all the big names that you've probably heard of, right? Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of college, huge risk. Bezos dropped out of a hedge fund, so he was getting like a pretty big salary, but he gave all that up to start a company. all of these really successful people, we hear about the success, right? Because that's how they become famous, but we don't hear about the risks. We don't hear about the fact that they failed multiple times before they actually got to where they want to be. I think for me, this was very clear when I was applying for a scholarship from an organization called Fundação Estudar. It's this organization gives scholarships to Brazilians studying in Brazil and in the US as well. And I applied my freshman year of college. I was pretty arrogant. I was like, oh, okay, like I go to Harvard, like it's a pretty good school. I know some of the people in this organization who are already getting a scholarship, so I can talk about how they taught me about this organization and whatnot. And so quite frankly, I got cocky and I didn't dedicate myself as much as I should have. I didn't prepare myself as much as I should have. And I went to the final round, again, pretty cocky, and then I got cut. And at that point, I was like somewhat angry at myself. I was like, how did this happen? I was certain I was going to get in. But then I paused, I stepped back and I was like, wait, if I think about just the fact that I failed, then the fact that I failed in and of itself is not very helpful, right? Like it's not going to get me anywhere. But if I pause, if I humble myself and actually ask for feedback, like what is it that I did wrong and how can I improve, then I can try again in the future. And I think that was very important because when I got that feedback, I was able to really reorganize myself and really focus on, okay, so it seems like I need to be able to express my sonho grande, my big dream at the end of the road a little bit better. I need to ensure that I'm taking up space with how I'm expressing my ideas. So it's not just something intangible in the air, but rather something concrete. And I was able to apply that so that next year I actually was able to get into the foundation. And that's just a way of saying that if you don't fail and then learn from your failings, you're really not going to grow that often, right? You're not going to be, quite frankly, like you're probably going to be very, very good regardless of what you do, but you're not going to be exceptional unless you take these big risks, because these big risks are what are going to distinguish you from everyone else, essentially. So I think that careful risk taking, but then very importantly, learning from those risks, right? Being humble enough to analyze your mistake, owning up to your mistake and saying, yes, this is something that is in my control. Because if you say, oh, it's because coronavirus stopped me from doing this and my family didn't help me or whatever, you're never going to be able to grow, because if you throw everything to exterior sources, to things that you can't control, then you're not going to be able to change your future, essentially. So I think taking risks and then learning from those risks are extremely important.
Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that, Pedro, because so many times we do, not we, but I guess I'll just speak in general, people have the tendency of always finding somebody to blame. It's always someone else's fault, right? It's someone else's fault that I didn't get there. Or what you just said about that cocky attitude, right? Well, I'm just so great, right? I'm just, the all powerful. And I go to Harvard and I have all these insider connections. And of course I'm going to get the scholarship. And then, but what are you really doing to get there? And maybe kind of failing forward and maybe falling on your face was probably the best thing that happened to you in your freshman year, because you were able to take that feedback to heart, learn. And as you said, you can't just say, okay, I failed, so now what, right? But actually taking the time to go back and learning from the mistake that you made and understanding, why didn't you get that scholarship? What was missing? And then going back and saying, okay, so these are the things that I need to work on for the next round is just so important. So thank you for sharing that. Are there any other mistakes that you guys would like to share, or failing forward moments that any of you would like to share, Jose or Ryan?
Yes. So I remember the first class, the only class I took with you was actually SWAT, Students with Advisory Teachers. And at SWAT, you always spoke about the importance of taking calculated risks and knowing how where you could go, what are the possible consequences. And that's a little bit of what I've tried to follow throughout my life. Coming back to Brazil after my father's accident was totally a decision I made. There was no pressure. Actually, my parents wanted me to stay in the US. They were completely against my decision in the beginning, and it was a decision I took. And attending law school was another decision I made. It was my choice to do it. And I failed at attending law school because it was something I didn't want to do. I decided at one moment it could help me, but it actually didn't. And when people say 99% of the experiences you have happen in the 1% of time you leave your comfort zone, that is completely true. When I came here and I came back to Brazil, I opened a new reality to my life. That's when I started to actually go into entrepreneurship. That's when I opened my business, which also failed, but it failed and I learned from it. And the failure that I got taught me a lot about people management, about managing my expectations, communication. So I had a lot of lessons from my failure and lessons that I'm trying to apply now because I'm trying to bring it back on. So it's really about taking the experiences and maximizing the learning from it. And I honestly think failure is probably the most important part of the learning process because it's when you're actually forced to adapt. If you don't adapt, you're going to keep on making the same mistakes on and on. But if you stop, reflect on the reasons on how you acted, why you acted like that, and then try to make a plan to restart and try again on pursuing whatever you were doing, that's when you actually learn. And so I really love the curves and the turns that my life has. And I think those were the most important opportunities I had and the best learning experiences I had. Because when I was just following the regular path, like Pedro said, if I just kept on going, I was probably going to be fairly successful. But the question is, am I going to be successful and happy? I don't think so, not necessarily, because I'm just following the people, I'm following the current, and that's not necessarily where happiness lies. So so when I started to go against, not necessarily against, you're never supposed to go against the current, but when I started to go and follow my dreams and my decisions and taking calculated risks, that's when I really started enjoying life and enjoying the path I was taking. And honestly, that's when I started learning the most. So it's a lot about taking the risks and knowing that there will be consequences, but knowing if you can bear the consequences that life will bring on you. So I think it's a lot about that.
Thank you so much, Jose. I think that what you mentioned with regards to when you fail as well, I guess that's when you gain depth in life, right? You become less shallow, right?
Exactly.
Everything just is linear and easy, and you could have just had the perfect life, and if that's your definition of happiness, great. But you don't have depth, you don't have knowledge, and then you lack. I guess it's just you lack experience, and you lack the thoughtfulness, and you lack greater understandings that you are only able to gain when you go through difficult moments, through mistakes, through failures, or through whatever, through the curveballs, or through whatever it is that you want to call these opportunities in your life.
I think that's when you gain a story to tell. That's when you gain repertoire to tell. And that's how you build an actual character. So if you never fail, you're only going to know the book. But if you get to play a little bit off the book in a positive way, that's when you're actually going to learn.
Thank you so much for that, Jose. Ryan, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll add one point. I think everything that was said was really articulately put. I think another idea is just to pay really close attention to the mistakes you make, because often we tend to make certain mistakes systemically, both as humans more broadly, but also as individuals. And the closer you can pay attention to where you're going wrong, even when it comes to small errors and smaller failures than the bigger ones that might be more apparent events that we should learn from. If you really focus closely on even smaller errors, you can course correct as you move forward. I think that's super. I've read a lot about that from the pedagogy standpoint and how important feedback, like timely, ample feedback, is to students' learning. But I try to apply that to myself all the time too. Like when I teach, I constantly, even if I think things are going well, issue surveys to students and request feedback. I make fora for students to give me feedback anonymously at any point of the term, even informal pulse checks throughout the course of a year. Just to get any feedback as to the mistakes you're making is literal gold. It is like the perfect, the more tailored it is, the more helpful it'll be in tinkering out and getting things as good as you can. So I think the one point I'll add is pay really close attention to minor mistakes too, in addition to the big failings. Hopefully not too many, because they can really help you course correct and become better the closer you pay attention.
Excellent. Yeah, the whole idea of the importance of feedback, right? And the importance of timely feedback. Like when you get that feedback and then what you do with that feedback, right? Because it's not just about asking for feedback. And it goes back to what Pedro was saying. It's asking for the feedback, reflecting on the feedback, and then having an action plan that will follow that feedback so that you can then learn from the opportunity that was given to you, right? Learn from the mistakes that you made, right? Learn from these moments that you had in life that are just going to help make you stronger and deeper and more knowledgeable and have a greater understanding. So that's that, you know, I'm kind of reflecting here and going back to a lot of the mistakes that I made throughout my life and a lot of the difficult moments that I had to overcome, and then how those really helped me become who I am today. So interesting. Thank you so much for sharing those thoughtful words. And unfortunately, it's 11 o'clock here in Brazil. And I told everybody that, you know, we would keep you for 1 hour. But before we let you go, I would like you guys to share one last message. And I'm going to contextualize it a little bit further with regards to just dedication and the whole idea of, in order to get to where all of you are, and in order to achieve your goals in life, there has to be commitment, there has to be dedication, there has to be hours that are put in, sometimes additional hours, sometimes the lack of sleep, sometimes there's a cost to all of this, right? To being to achieving the level or to achieving your definition of success, whatever that may be. So I guess the message that I would like you guys to end with is, if you guys could leave one last message to everyone here that's listening to all of you today with regards to commitment and dedication and all of that, what message would you leave? And you guys can choose whoever wants to go first.
I can start with this one. I think if I had to pick one message, it's find what you love and do it. I read a book by Amy Chua, a Yale law prof, recently, and it was on how she parents her children. And one of her propositions in the book was that the way she tries to get her kids to be happy is to press them really hard to do their absolute best, and how stressful that is at times for her kids. But that as they came to be extremely better and better at what they did and developed passions in it, they were happy to invest the time over time. I think that's really been a key takeaway for me. I absolutely love what I do. I'm super passionate about what I study. I love the people I talk to every day. And so I'm willing to invest the inordinate hours that it takes to hopefully accomplish what I hope to. The more you love what you're doing, and if you really take the time to find something you're passionate about, it becomes so much more fun and joyful. And that's what life is for ultimately. I think having joy ourselves and bringing joy to others, it becomes so much more joyful putting in the work to get what you want done.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Ryan. And when you do what you love, there's this whole movement now and lots of articles that have been written about this, but when you really do what you love and when you work with what you love, work actually becomes part of your life, right? It shouldn't be seen as something separate, right? You shouldn't have life and then work, right? Because then you are never going to have the opportunity to think of work as pleasure. But that life and work should kind of come together, and that work should be part of your life. And that if it is, you're doing what you really love and that you're really passionate about, and you're willing to commit all the hours because it's, again, part of your life, and you're not separating. Life has to be fun and work has to be miserable, right? You're bringing those two things together. So I truly connect with what you've just shared. So thank you for that. Who would like to go next? Wow.
I can go.
Okay.
I think building off of what Ryan said about finding your passion, I think it's also important for you to, when you're setting expectations for yourself, think about what it is that you want to achieve, right? We talked a lot about how you can get things done, but as José mentioned earlier, it's not just about getting things done, it's making sure that you're getting things done and being happy about what you got done, right? So think about what you want to achieve specifically, not necessarily what you think others expect from you, not what you think will make you look more impressive, not what you think is going to look best on your resume. Think about what it is that you want to get done and then dedicate yourself towards that objective. And the reason I say that is that even at later stages in life, what you'll notice is a lot of decisions are driven by what other people expect of you, right? Or what you think other people expect of you. But then if you do this and you think, oh, if I check these boxes, eventually I'll get to a point where I'm successful and then I can just do everything for myself where I'll be happy. Realistically, if you keep postponing your happiness, you'll never really find any like meaning with regards to what you do. So I think it's important for you to set expectations for yourself and make sure that those expectations are your own. Of course, if they align with expectations of maybe your parents or your friends, great, like that's good for you. But don't feel pressure to perform or do specific tasks because you think other people want that for you. Because in reality, anyone who cares about you cares that you're happy instead of what you achieve. And I think happiness at the end of the day is a much better metric than anything you can have on a CV or resume or any knowledge people can have with you. So don't worry about what others think of you, worry about what makes you happy.
Wow. Excellent message. Thank you so much, Pedro. And how do you define your journey of happiness, right? It's because once you're happy, you will be successful, right? And then you will be committed and everything else will come. All right, Clarissa and José, you guys can choose who goes next.
Well, I think you have to also have in mind that during your career, during your education, sometimes you will need to do things that you don't love to do. Like, for example, if you're preparing for a vestibular or for SATs, you're going to have to study for classes that you don't love. So my tip for you is keep an eye on the prize. Try to organize yourself so you're not overwhelmed. Ask for help for people that are more knowledgeable than you. When I was preparing for the vestibular, I had to be really good in math and physics, in chemistry, areas that weren't easy for me. So I would always ask help for to my friends that were really good at that, and that helped me a lot in going through those phases where I had to do things that I didn't love. And what I learned is that when you dedicate yourself, even when you don't love that course or that class that much, you will have some satisfaction feeling when that is over and you can get a good grade, or when you achieve that goal, it will be worth it. So I think it's important to always remind yourself of that when you're having to do things that you don't like as much and that are difficult for you.
Yeah, and I think, Clarissa, it goes back to what Ryan and some of you have said throughout the conversation is also surrounding yourself with the right people, right? As you mentioned, people that could help you. You know, you had the people that could help you with the chemistry and the math and with the physics, and surrounding yourself with these people so that you can then capitalize on those relationships and then be able to support your learning and your knowledge and your understanding throughout these opportunities with your friends and with people that you have chosen to connect with and with the connections that you have chosen to make throughout life. So making sure that those connections are relevant, right? That you are, again, especially when you're in middle school, sometimes there's the whole thing with cliques and who you want to hang out with and who's the right crowd and why this friend versus that friend. And I think it's just so important for us to think about this is like, what are these relationships all about? And who are the people that we can connect with that will be relevant for what we believe in, for what we want to achieve, for our life. And then once you're getting older and you're growing up and you're going through these processes and changes and all of that, you know that you can count on those people because those are like-minded people that, like you, are trying to achieve goals and are trying to achieve their best and going after their dreams and their passions. So I think that's such an important nugget of information as well for our middle school learners to take with them, right? With regards to friendships and relationships and choices and all that. So thank you for sharing that. José?
So I think it's a little bit of what everyone has said already. It's about doing something you love. It's about finding the people that will support you throughout your life. But it's also about finding meaning. If you have something you believe in, if you have a fuel to drive you through the hardships that you're gonna find, then it's gonna work out. Because people often say that an entrepreneur's life can be described as a horror story with a closing chapter that's a love story. And that's pretty much how life is too, because it's not necessarily going to be easy. It's not necessarily going to be you doing only the things that you like. But if you're doing something with purpose, you're going to be able to push through the difficulties and overcome them and make it to the closing love story chapter. And it's also about being who you are. There's a Brazilian country song that says a guy completely changed the person he was in order to fall in love with a woman that he liked. But in the end, because he completely changed who he was, she didn't want him anymore. So it's all about being who you are and finding purpose. If that's what you're able to do, you're going to be able to overcome the difficulties. And in the end, and also throughout the journey, you're going to be happy because you know there's a reason for you to be doing what you're doing. And that's going to be your fuel. That's going to push you through the hardships, and that's going to make you achieve the goals you have. So I think that's the lesson. It's about finding purpose and being ready to take on challenges, to face the hardships, but knowing that on the end, if you're following the purpose, you're going to make it.
Wow. Thank you guys for all of those words of wisdom. And this reminds me of Tony Wagner is one of my favorite authors. He wrote Creating Innovators, and he wrote other books and lots of articles with regards to education and change in education and innovation. And he has a whole, there's lots of things that are positively connected to Tony Wagner. And one of the things that Tony always brings up is the idea of bringing together purpose, passion, and play. And he connects purpose, passion, and play to education. But purpose, passion, and play can be connected to our lives, like who we are as human beings. And if we find purpose, and if we have passion, and if we play, right, have fun along the way, it'll all come together. And I think that when I hear all of the the four of you sharing your voices, it reminds me of purpose, passion, and play. And that's a huge kind of takeaway for me as well. So with that being said, I would like to close this morning bites and thank Pedro, José, Clarissa, and Ryan so much. I'm actually getting goosebumps because I am so proud of you as your former educator, teacher, mentor, and just having had the opportunity and honor to have had you as part of my journey and as part of my growth as an individual has made all the difference in my life. And I can tell the four of you, and getting a little emotional, is that I'll definitely never forget what you guys brought into my world and into my learning opportunities as a teacher. And I thank you every day for giving me the opportunity to have tried to make a difference and to have tried to mentor and help and coach you along the way. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for taking the time in your busy schedules for being here. And I didn't mean to cry, but I'm super emotional that you guys took this opportunity to do this. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Priscilla. I think we also forgot to say how being thankful is important, and I'm very thankful for all that you have done for me. And I know you have positively impacted the life of hundreds of people throughout your career. So I'm very thankful for that.
Thank you. Thank you. And with that, we close our morning bites, and I hope to have these four wonderful people back sometime soon so that we can all talk more about educational pathways, academic successes, and just life trajectories and how we got there and how we are where we are today. So with that, I hope to see all of you in our In Mind series on Thursday, where we have Daniel Cluffy, the head of Google Education for Latin America, joining us. And then on Friday, we also have another special Morning Bites in the morning. So thank you all, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.